Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. We've got a big one for you today. The NFL schedule release was Wednesday night, so we have plenty to dissect, along with last weekend's rookie minicamp. Here to break it all down is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. What's up, Chud?
Well, I'm trying to be on the go, Scott, but I'm not a lot of Z's for me the last few nights, man, with the schedule release and the Cavs, and obviously they're done now. So I know this is Brown's podcast, but Cavs just too many injuries to overcome, and Boston just too much to handle, and kind of had a feeling after Game 3 that's the way it was going to go. And I know the injuries happened, but you know pretty much Boston did to the Cavs what they did to Miami. They just game 2 at home. They just play around and lose a game. And, it is what it is. But it'll be interesting offseason for the Cavs. But they're done, and now we have football to look forward to.
Yes, we do. Yeah, I mean, it's tough for the season to be over. Now you just wonder what's going to happen, right? Could there be huge changes or not huge changes, right? Do they decide that they're getting better, they should run it back, the injuries are the reason they lost? I mean, there's a lot of stuff for that organization to figure out. So I figure, I would assume it could be next couple of days, could be next couple of weeks. A lot of big decisions to make.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, both coaching and how they want to run with the team, how they want to build the team moving forward. So it should be always interesting in Cavs land. Got the Guardians coming home for a big series against the Twins. They're in first place. And as we know, always something to talk about with the Browns. So, good minus the Cavs having their season over with, but there'll be plenty to talk about with them, just with the what possibly could happen. But again, I guess the point is plenty to talk about here in Cleveland, Ohio, Scott, when it comes to the sports.
Always, always. So, Chud, I mean, obviously, we want to talk schedule here. What would give me your first reaction? I'm curious to what your first reaction was when you saw that schedule.
Yeah, first reaction. So I know. Well, the first thing I'm looking for is primetime games.
Yeah.
That's selfish reasons with my schedule. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of that's a big thing about this schedule. A lot of people wanted to know when they were going to play Vegas, right? Because I think a lot of people are going to travel to Las Vegas. People want to know when they can take vacation days. And so I think a lot of this, we already know the teams they're going to play. So a lot of this has to do with how this affects your personal life, because it really does. And for me, it's the primetime games, because that's tough on me getting up at 2 a.m.
Okay.
But also just the fact that there's, the 4 primetime games in the last 7 weeks. I mean, that obviously stands out. That's big, right? But I'll go over that because I know that stands out to you. And I'll be curious to see if you pick another option. But I think maybe the thing that might stand out just as much or more is the fact that they don't have a divisional game until week 7. And I think that with the way that gauntlet is at the end of the year, as tough as that end of the year is going to be, they really need to come out and win some games early, because the season's more favorable at the beginning, especially not having a division game until week 7.
Yeah, you hit a bunch of huge points there, Chud. You're right. You always look for the prime time. You look for the division. But for me, and to me, those are tied into my biggest takeaway. And that's the final 7 weeks, starting November 21st. You get 4 primetime games, and it's Pittsburgh, Denver, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Miami, Baltimore, right? So you're looking at 7 tough games, right? You could say just, obviously we're in May. Denver looks like the easiest opponent, but it's Monday night in Denver. The Browns always struggle in Denver. It's Monday night. Sean Payton, who knows, maybe Denver will be better in the second season with Sean Payton as coach, right? You get 4 division games in the final 7. You get 2 sets of back-to-back primetime games. So I guess I'm saying the backloaded part of the schedule, it jumps out to me. And it ties it all in. It ties in the division. It ties in the primetime games that we always focus on. And you mentioned it. So if it's backloaded, you better get to work early. And Dallas, the opener home versus Dallas, September 8th. That's going to be a tough game. Dallas is good. Dallas is a playoff team. Dallas has a big-time offense. Then you go at Jacksonville, Giants at home, at Vegas, at Washington. And that feels like where you might be able to win a couple games, right? And you're going to have to stockpile some wins early because it's going to be hard. And let's right, and this is the last time I'm going to say it. We're 4 months away. So you never know what's going to happen, injuries, how teams perform, any of that. But right now, it looks like you better win early because it's going to be hard to win late.
Yeah, and you want to walk away from those first 2 games with at least one win. It's always tough to win the first game on the road, and I think Jacksonville's better than what they showed at the end of the year last year. But again, that could change. Who knows? Right. But Dallas will not be easy at home. So you want to come away 1-1. 2-0 would be amazing. You definitely don't want to start 0-2, and then you go down the line there. I like the bye week at week 10. That's good.
Yeah, and then they've had last year was an early bye, if I'm thinking correctly. They've had some weird buys, it feels like, the last couple of years. So put one in the middle of the season. That helps. You get a couple of mini buys, they like to call them, with the Thursday night games late, which helps recovery. I mean, you get the short week, right, which is rough, but then you get the longer time to recover after those Thursday nights. So I think that part helps them. The bye, the late, or the middle bye, and then the middle late bye, and then those Thursday to Monday between Pittsburgh and Denver, right? That's a lot of time to recover, which is nice. I mean, that's only coming a couple weeks after the bye. Then you go Thursday, Sunday around Christmas with Cincinnati, then Miami. It's the dual-edged sword, right? You have the short week, but then you get a little extra time on the back end. I think you can look at that as good and bad.
But listen, I think 3 out of the 4 primetime games can be flexed, right? I think the Steelers one's locked in, correct, but those other 3 could change. And I don't think that was a mistake by the NFL, because they've been burned by the Browns before, giving them a lot of primetime games, and they didn't live up to expectations. Yeah. This is a perfect spot for the NFL, because if the Browns end up, having another great year like they did last year, and they're a contender at the end of the year, then that's a great spot for the NFL to have them in later in the year. But if they don't live up to the expectations, they'll knock them out.
Oh, I completely agree, Chud. I completely agree with that. It might not be just the Browns, right? If Denver's bad, right, then they could flex that out. Or Miami tends to be, happens to be bad. Or even Cincinnati, right? You get another Joe Burrow injury or what have you. But we're looking at through the Browns lens, and it's okay. They'll play Pittsburgh. That's a primetime game that's going to be on Thursday night. After that, they could be flexed out, right? And it might not even be, a lot of it depends on the matchup, right? If the matchup that is scheduled is good, they're likely not to change that, right? Because there's so much planning that goes into it. But they could also change because there's an unbelievable matchup, right? I mean, whatever that would be, a team's undefeated and you want to get them on prime time, right? So there's reasons it could be these games could be flexed out. But from our perspective, looking at it from the Browns' perspective, are they going to live up to what they did last year? Is Deshaun Watson going to stay healthy? Is he going to play like a big-time quarterback? Right? All those things when we talk about, are the Browns going to be in playoff contention? Do those things come to fruition? Do they stay healthy enough? All those things. Or do they have the regression which they had coming off the 2020 playoff season, right? So I do think the league and the networks are kind of covering their bases a little bit by giving the Browns all those primetime games late, because you can't ignore the fact that they won 11-6 last year. They made the playoffs. They have a really good schedule, right? Like, there's a lot of attractive opponents on the Browns' schedule. They have a good roster. All those things, right? All the reasons we think the Browns are going to be pretty good and be in playoff contention. Those things can't be ignored. But I do think the NFL and the networks hedge their bets a bit.
How about 3 road games in a row followed by 3 home games in a row?
Yeah, it's just unusual, right? It's a quirk of the schedule. The 3 straight road games, first time since 2011, I want to say, for the Browns. So obviously that shows you it doesn't happen a lot. I do think now, we're at the 17-game schedule. So there's 9 road games this year. So you got to jam them in somehow, right? And it's tough to go home away, home away, home away. And sometimes you have to do this. Now, so you go Vegas, Washington, Philly. Like Vegas is a trip, is a long, it's a long flight. The other two are pretty short. So it's not like you're flying, Vegas, Seattle, Denver, whatever. And then it's balanced with the 3 straight home games, and that's, you mentioned at the top. That's when you get into the division, right? You go at Vegas, at Washington, at Philly, and then home Cincy, home Baltimore, home Chargers, bye week, right? So, you got to win those games. Like, you have to win some of those home games, right? Even though they're tough. If you're going to compete in this division, this stacked division, you're going to have to beat your division foes, as good as they are. And you got to do it at home, right? And we're not going to play the schedule game, right? We're not going to go game by game. But when you think big picture, you got to win a bunch of home games, and you got to beat. The odds are better to beat your division foes at home than on the road, right? And we've seen that historically. So, so that's how I look at that stretch, right? You're going to have to, I don't, we talk about the schedule game, but you look and go, okay, well, you need to win 2 out of these 3, right? You need, I think you can look at it in blocks, and it doesn't always play out that way. But certainly, I think if you think about the division, you got to go at least 3-3 in division. And if that's 2-1 at home and 1-2 on the road, like that math works, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you want to exactly what you said about the division. You don't want to end up in an 0-2 or 0-3 hole out of the gate. So that's a great point. Instead of trying to analyze it game by game, because so much changes and we typically don't play the schedule game. There'll come a point where we do, because we just do, but now's not the time to do that.
Right.
How about, going to the preseason? How about traveling out to Seattle in the third one? I mean, usually the road preseason games are close. It's like Washington, or jump down to Florida, to Tampa Bay or Jacksonville or something like that, or New York or something like that. But how about going all the way to Seattle?
Yeah, I got to get to the bottom of that, Chud. And I'm looking right. So they're all Saturday games, and sometimes that varies. Sometimes they play, Thursday or Sunday or whatever, but they're all Saturday games. It's weird because I'm pretty sure about this. The Browns schedule their own preseason game. So that's not a league, like the league doesn't mandate that. For instance, the Vikings game, it's because the Browns are going to play, or the Vikings are going to come to town for joint practices, right? So they schedule that around a preseason game. They can make that work. Now, the days might be through the NFL. I'm not positive about that, whether or not it's Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. But the Seattle's weird. So I'm going to have to ask people about that, and I haven't yet, because that was not the original plan. I know that they were looking for a closer game, and I had not heard Seattle. I had heard other team mentioned, and now now it comes out and it's Seattle, and I was stunned by that.
And then the first game is Green Bay at home. So 2 at home and 1 on the road.
The preseason, yeah, right.
Preseason,
yeah.
Green Bay and the Vikings at home, and then Seattle on the road.
Exactly, and that's now there's only 3 preseason games, so you go every other year. You have 2 at home. So last year was weird because they had the extra preseason game with Joe Thomas, but there's only 1 at Cleveland Brown Stadium. This year there's 2, and it'll flip, next year.
Yeah. Did I see a Goodell report or something about how he wants to add another regular season game and drop the preseason down to 2? Did you see that?
Yeah, that was during the draft. He was doing the interviews, and for him to come out, I was driving home last night, and I heard Bill Polian, the old Colts GM, talking about it on Sirius Radio, and he was saying if Goodell is that open about saying it publicly, then he thinks it's going to get done, right? He's not just throwing this out there. That there's probably been talks with the NFLPA, and if not, he feels like they'll be able to do it. So, yeah, he wants to go to 18 games. We all knew when they went to 17 that 18 was coming. Now they're going to have to give the players something because the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, has them locked in at 17 games. So to make the jump to 18, the players are going to have to get something. I don't know, who knows? Is it an uptick in percentage of revenue? Is it less off-season work, right? You're a less commitment to be in the building. I know it's voluntary, but do they change that? Something. There's going to be some bone is going to have to be given to the union because it's obviously tougher on your body to play 18 games, all of it, right? It's a longer work schedule, all that goes into it. So it'll be interesting to see what the NFL offers the union because it doesn't sound like Goodell wants to wait until the new bargaining agreement, which this one runs through 2029, I think. There's a 10-year, they signed a 10-year thing in 2020. So it feels like he wants to do it quicker than that. So we'll see what they do when they open up the collective bargaining agreement, if they change it before then. And yeah, 2 preseason games, 18 games. He kind of rails against the preseason, Goodell does. I think coaches appreciate it more than he does. And I get it, right? Like, it's better for TV. The regular season means more preseason. It's just not the same, right? There's not the buzz. A lot of teams don't play their starters in the preseason. But yeah, it certainly feels like we are headed toward 18 games, and it's probably sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no doubt. Looking at, one thing I wanted to bring up with the AFC North is, the Browns schedule's tough, but, the Steelers looks brutal. And one thing, I don't want to, gloss over is the Bengals seem to, from what I've seen, have the best schedule of the 4 teams, being they ended up in last place. Yeah, and that scares me a little bit because that schedule's not reflective or being a last place team with the Burrow injury, and that's just something that we might keep our eye out. And obviously, we know schedules can change and teams change, but sure, at least right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chud. I studied that Steelers one because there was a lot of, I think, angst is the word I'm looking for in Pittsburgh because of the schedule. And they don't play. I mean, we were talking about how the Browns is backloaded. I think the Steelers in their last 8 games play all 6 division games. They got a bunch of primetime games. I'm gonna look it up as I'm talking. But as tough as I think the Browns' end of the season is, I think Pittsburgh's is more difficult, which is saying something, right? So, the fact is,
did you say that I think 6 of their last 8 games are against the division?
Yeah, right. They don't play yet. Yeah. They don't play division game until toward the end, and then it's 6 out of their last 8 with primetime games in there. And the division's all going to have tough schedules because, with the exception of 1 game, they all play the same, or it's the exception of 2 games. They all play the same teams, right? Now, home and away, home and road differs. So that's important to some degree. But, because they all play the division foes, they all play the same, like the same divisions from the NFC, the divisions from the AFC. Where the difference is if you're the first place team, you play the first place team in the other 2 AFC divisions that you don't play everyone, right? So, for example, the Browns play everybody in the AFC West this year. So the 2 different games inside the division are the AFC East and the AFC South. So the Browns play, so the Browns, the East games, they play Miami, right? Right. So they play Miami, and then they play Jacksonville because the Browns finished second in the division, and those teams finished second in the division, right? So that's what makes the Bengals one a little bit easier. They get the last place teams in the East and the South, right? So they get New England, and then what's this? The worst team in the South would have been. Oh my gosh, I'm looking. Not popping up.
It wasn't Indianapolis.
Tennessee. Right. So those are the 2 differences. But that can matter, right? Obviously, it can matter. The 2 huge games. But yeah, you're looking at. So now I'm looking at Cincy. They start home versus New England, then they go to Kansas City. They get Washington, Carolina. Actually, you're right. There's a third game now because of the 17th game. So they got Carolina, which is a terrible team last year, right? So they get that last place. So it affects 3 games because of the 17-game schedule. Yeah, so it's certainly easier. They only finish with 2 division games toward the end. They got a late bye, and then they go Pittsburgh, at Dallas, at Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, at Pittsburgh. Now they get 3 division games there in the last, 6. But yeah, that does matter. But I'll tell you this, the NFC or the AFC North just has tougher schedules. If you look at the strength of schedule based on last season, the Browns have the worst, it's the toughest based on opponent win record from 2023. But a lot of that's because all the division teams were all good, right? And then the divisions are playing, right? The NFC East. So the AFC North is going to have difficult schedules, period, because they play each other, because the way this season sets up with the divisions they play. But there are nuances, and you're right. Cincinnati's got the easiest of that, and it's because Joe Burrow was hurt, but now he's back. And yeah, I mean, Chud, right now, it's the toughest division in football, I think, without a doubt. And we heard that, all 4 teams finished with winning records last year, right? Which nobody does. I think that was the first in history. So I wouldn't be stunned if it happened again, right? Which means everybody's going to kind of be around, I think, 11, 10, 9 wins, right? Baltimore won 13 games last year. I think it'll be tough for Baltimore to do that again because the schedule's more difficult, because Joe Burrow's healthy again, right? It's just a tough schedule for everybody. And maybe that makes the Browns and the Browns fans feel better because they're not in it alone, right? Everybody inside this division has a meat grinder to face.
Give me the 3 games you're looking forward to the most, then I'll give you my 3, or I can go first.
You go first. Let me think about this for a minute.
Yeah. Okay. So in no certain order, the 3 I'm looking forward to the most are the opener against Dallas. I mean, you open it home, Cowboys coming in, 4:25. We've talked about that before. That 1:00 games are great, right? But there's that something special about that 4:25. That's the main game that day on Fox. Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I mean, you start the season. I mean, there's just so exciting. I mean, if that was Jacksonville in Cleveland or Washington in Cleveland, I wouldn't be as pumped up. But yeah, you're already pumped up for the first game. Last year was the Bengals. That's great. But just Dallas, man. I mean, you hate the Cowboys. That's an awesome one. And again, no certain order. Next one, the Dolphins, because it's on Sunday Night Football in Cleveland.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's 2019 last time we've had a home Sunday Night Football game. I work for NBC and Channel 3. I think Sunday Night Football is the feat. That's the number one game, right? I mean, hasn't it overtaken Monday Night Football?
It's 13 years in a row is the number one TV show in America, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, you finally get a home game on Sunday Night Football. So it's the Dolphins coming in. It's a good matchup. So Cowboys, Dolphins, and the third one, I'm not going to pick a division game. Like, yeah, Monday Night Football is cool. Thursday nights, whatever. I'm going to go Kansas City. The defending champs in your house. I can really measure up to see where we're at that point of the year. Hopefully, we're still in it, and I'll be looking forward to that one. So I think those are my top 3. As far as fans go on a traveling basis, I think a lot of people will be excited about that Vegas game because you could turn that into a home away from home game, but obviously not as appealing as a matchup. So my 3 are Cowboys, Dolphins, and Chiefs.
Those are good ones. Real quick, I think I got distracted, Chud. I was looking up that Steelers final 8, all 6 division games, plus the Eagles and Chiefs are their final 8 games. So that's a
wow.
It's a brutal way to finish, isn't it? Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. I like your choices. I think I'd go Pittsburgh Thursday night because it's a prime time, because it's the Steelers, it's home. They played the Steelers on Monday night last year, and we know how that ended. We know the Nick Chubb injury, so I think there's some symmetry there. I love the Chiefs pick from you. I mean, they're going for 3 straight Super Bowls, which has never been done. Kevin Stefanski said it in the statements when the team released the schedule yesterday. They played at Arrowhead a couple times, right? The playoff loss. They opened there that one year. They get them at home, and like to get the home crowd, it gives you a chance to beat the juggernaut Chiefs. So I like that matchup. I think that's exciting. And then strictly football, I'll go Ravens. I'll go Ravens finale. I mean, that could mean everything. Could mean nothing, but it could mean everything. Division could be on the line. That could get flexed to Sunday night. Right? None of those Week 18 games, they're all to be determined if it's the day and the time, right? It could be Saturday, it could be Sunday. I don't think they do Mondays anymore in Week 18. Could Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
And then, it could be prime time if it's for the division, if it's for the last wildcard spot, whatever it is. So I'm going to go those 3. From a personal / travel aspect, I mean, at Vegas, I love going out there. I'm actually going out there in June for vacation. But to go out there and cover a game, hopefully I get to do it. It'd be exciting. I already know people are looking into flying. I got texts. I played softball last night. One of my buddies was already trying to figure it out. I got to tell fans listening, hotels are crazy expensive. So you're gonna have to figure that out because they're already expensive. Looking at that weekend, New Orleans is always a good trip, right? And then Denver's a good trip. I like that. December, you never know what kind of weather you're gonna get out there. But Vegas and New Orleans are a couple of fun trips.
Yeah. Since you brought up softball, I got to bring it up. Yesterday, I called you and I'm like, "What's up?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm on my way to a softball game." And I just replied, "Man, I'm on my way home from Aldi, getting ready to go to my 6th grade daughter's choir concert."
Yeah, well,
What?
I enjoy softball more than that. I enjoy going to the bar, but it was a rough opener. I'm getting older every year, Chud. I got to work on those reflexes. Takes me about a half a second when there's a pop-up to move. I feel like my feet are in cement.
And I've been wanting to come play with you for like 10 years, and it just hasn't happened.
I know, it's crazy.
I pretty much retired. I was a big softball guy in my 20s and early 30s, and I miss it, man. Maybe one day, but I remember I did try when I moved back to Cleveland, and I went out and played with Withers in Bay on the lighted field there, and I pulled my hamstring. My wife looked at me. She's like, "What are you doing?" I couldn't do any yard work for a couple days, and I just got that look, and I was like, "All right." So maybe when the kids are a little bit older, I can try it. But I'm getting older, Scott.
I know.
I'm running out of time.
I know. That's the issue with that. You gotta wait till your kids get older, and then you're too old. I know. I mean, I'm too old to be doing it, but I'm still doing it.
Yeah, well, maybe. But anyway, yeah. So, but Aldi, man, you get some good deals there. So I don't know. I actually don't mind shopping. So whatever. But last thing on schedule before we move on, unless you have anything else, is just you got the prime time, but you don't have any international games. There's no Christmas. There's nothing of that nature.
No, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Though we were looking to all those, right, as possibilities. We knew they weren't going to Brazil, even though they wanted to finish second to go to Brazil. The league went with Green Bay. And I think the Browns will wind up being grateful for that. They said they were, excited to go if they got the chance, but it's a long flight. I think there's a lot of issues with that trip. So I think they're glad it winds up that I think it's a good thing for the team. I think it's a good thing for the organization. They don't have the hassle of going down to Brazil. And then no London game. They'll probably it feels like they'll get an international game next year. There's more and more international games, right? They're playing one in Germany this year. They're playing one in South America. The Browns haven't been overseas since 2017, so they're due. But this year, the league went with New England versus Jacksonville in London, and that's why the Browns are playing at Jacksonville week 2. So they get to stay. They get to stay in the country, and I think that just makes it easier, right? It's a tough schedule. You don't have that long trip. I think those are beneficial. And then, I think this is just more a personal thing, but no Christmas game. I don't know how the general fan base feels about that, right? No Thanksgiving game, no Christmas game. It's easier from my perspective, right? It's hard to cover games on holidays, right? You're away from your family. Sometimes you have to travel. It's an issue. I know people like watching games on holidays. I get it, right? I watch Thanksgiving football. I watch Christmas football. I don't know if you want to see your team on those days. I think that's an interesting question. I would be curious to see how fans feel about that. I think they're glad that the games are on, but if it's your team, then either you go to the game or it's all about that. And if it's on Christmas, then it's there's playoff implications. So the Browns don't have to deal with that this year. I don't have to deal with that this year. Christmas is on a Wednesday, so the NFL's forcing those games to happen on a Wednesday, which means the teams playing on Christmas, which Baltimore and Pittsburgh are. They have to play on the previous Saturday. It's a short week. So there's a lot involved in that. In my opinion, the Browns escape this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Thanksgiving, it's a Thursday. You've done it before, and that type of thing. But Christmas is a little bit different, especially on a Wednesday. Yep. I think if Christmas, when it lands on Sunday or Monday or, and it doesn't mess up the routine, no question from a working standpoint for you and media members, absolutely, you don't want it. So I get it. No problem with that. International game. I have no problem with pretty much everything you just said. So, as far as I think we broke that schedule down pretty well, unless you have anything else.
No, we're good, bud.
All right, let's go back real quick here before we wrap up, and just let's get your thoughts on rookie minicamp. Got to see Zinter out there, Mike Hall Jr. and the rest of the guys. Stefanski spoke with you guys. I listened to that. I was not there. Anything stand out from Stefanski?
No, nothing crazy at all, Chud. And Zinter, it was good that he got back out there at his first practice since he broke those two bones in his leg against Ohio State, the Michigan guard. We're talking about the third-round pick. So he hadn't practiced since November. I mean, he'd worked out, but he hadn't practiced right with team since end of November. So he was out there, looked good, trying to get his stamina back and back into football shape. But it looked like he could move. You're looking at a guard. It's tough to judge. They're not going offense, defense, right? So you're just watching guys do individual. But he looked fine to me. Mike Hall, you can see some of the burst. I will say that, the Browns have a bunch of new coaches. Andy Dickerson at offensive line. Jacques Césaire at defensive line. And it's a switch from last year, right? Bill Callahan, the grizzled veteran guy, feels like Andy Dickerson. Not that he's more hands-on, because Callahan was in these guys' faces. They do rep after rep after rep. But just a different vibe with Dickerson. Maybe he gives more, I don't know, direct teaching versus just, I don't know, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but you're just a different vibe, right? He's younger than Callahan. I don't think he's got the same hard-ass reputation that Callahan had, right? Callahan would really grind these guys. And I'm not saying Dickerson won't do that, but I think maybe he does it more with a smile than Callahan would. Those are the early first impressions. And Césaire at D-line, all D-line coaches are just fiery, right? I don't know if I've ever seen one that's not, and I think it goes with that position group. But he was, when you talk about hands-on, he was he had his hands on Mike Hall's ankle and knee and elbow when he was in a stance, just making sure everything was technically sound. And this is how we as the Browns want to do it, right? This is how Jim Schwartz, the coordinator, wants to do it. And then add that to fire personality, big voice, loud voice, a lot of energy. So it's interesting to see those two guys, the coaches, and there's other first-time coaches out there, or new coaches to the Browns out there, but those are the two I focused on. Jamari Thrash, the receiver, looked pretty smooth catching the ball. I thought he showed good hands. You did see the quick first step of Mike Hall, right? You watch the draft picks and the high draft picks versus the other guys, right? Whether or not they're tryout guys or rookie free agents that sign, and there's just a difference. And you could see that with Mike Hall, how he bent going through drills. But yeah, I mean, it's rookie minicamp. It's a couple of days, an hour practice. They don't have that first round draft pick that gets you excited. There's no quarterback. There's no, receiver at the top of the draft. But it was good to see them out there. Well, next time we do one, I did I thought it was an interesting interview with Nathaniel Watson, the linebacker. I talked to a couple of his former coaches, talked to him. So I haven't finished the story yet. I'll finish it hopefully this weekend. We can talk about it next week, but I thought that was good. I talked to Larry Johnson, Ohio State defensive line coach, about Mike Hall. We can talk about that at some point. But yeah, I mean, it was good to see these guys out there, and they were all available. They were all healthy. Zinter back was good. And just the last thought on that, Chud, is OTAs begin next week, the organized team activities. So you get the veterans with the rookies on the field, like it's the first real practices of the offseason program. It starts Tuesday. The media gets to go out there Wednesday. So we'll be out there, and the big question there is, will we see Deshaun Watson throw? I know he's been doing some of this on-field work, but we haven't seen, and I know he's throwing, but is he throwing kind of by himself, or is he throwing in practice? I don't expect him to do a ton during these OTAs, if anything, while we're out there, but that's the first time we'll actually get to see if he is or not. And then talk to either him and or Kevin Stefanski about the progress with the shoulder coming off the surgery.
You just reminded me of one other thing with the schedule I wanted to throw at you, but I'll do that last. But before we get to that, I saw Mike Hall Jr., something about him, not being afraid to set lofty goals. What exactly are his goals?
Yeah. I mean, he talked about rookie of the year. He said he asked, I think it was Jacques Césaire, the D-line coach, what's it going to take to be rookie of the year? And I just think it's interesting when young guys are as confident to express those kind of goals. And, Joe Thomas and Myles Garrett did it. Remember when they were rookies and they're talking about going to the Hall of Fame? Now, this is different, but I appreciate that. And, maybe it seems a little, I don't know, a little brash, a little arrogant. I didn't take it that way. I think it's, hey, I think, that's the biggest personal goal I could have as a rookie. So let me talk about what it would take, and the answer is it takes a ton of work. It takes showing up early and leaving late, right? Like that's how you get to these personal goals. And obviously he wants the team goals too. He talked about, wanting to go to the Super Bowl for his hometown team. But I just thought it was interesting that he wasn't shy about saying that, yeah, he talked about it and he's thinking about trying to be rookie of the year.
Yeah. We all have goals. He's trying to do that. You're trying not to get hurt in softball, and I'm hoping I pack the grocery bags good at all these. So we all have our goals. All right, last thing. Hey, I wanted to bring this up. I forgot. Did you see the Browns video with the bowling?
I did.
That was pretty good.
It was. These social media teams do all these really creative things with the schedule release and throughout the year, but especially the schedule release. It's like their Super Bowl. I thought it was interesting. I thought the fact that Pete Weber was there was interesting. Like, I don't know the Pete Weber connection. I know Pete Weber and, the bowler, and he's got that famous, whatever, the famous phrase that the Browns used at the end there. But it was interesting how they did it. It felt like a little, it felt like they tried to tie in a bunch of stuff, right, with that whole video. But it's fun to watch, and I give credit to the creative people. I'm not sure I have that. I know I don't have that in me.
No, not social media is definitely not my strength. That's for sure. I did get a kick out of Weber though, because I covered when I was in Toledo, big bowling city, Scott.
Oh, sure.
And they would actually get, I don't even know what the Super Bowl of bowling, whatever it's called. I have no idea, but they had it at Southwick Lanes. I think that's what it was. And I actually had to go cover it and shoot it with a camera. That was when I first started my career, man. And there's nothing, well, let's just put it this way. Shooting bowling without a tripod off your shoulder for a whole afternoon, not ideal.
Yeah, I bet.
Memories of that. But yeah, I remember covering him. He's a character. Did you catch the Steelers one by chance with the dad jokes?
I did not. I saw the Chargers. The Chargers always do an interesting one. I saw that one. I did not see the Steelers one.
Check out the Steelers
All right.
one. I mean, I know it's the Steelers and we hate them, but it's pretty funny.
All right.
And it's based around dad jokes, which hits home with me.
Sure.
So.
All right. I'll definitely check it out.
All right, I'm good. I'm going to go
Yep.
take a nap. Unless you got anything else, I'm done.
No, we're good, and then we'll do this next week. We'll if it's okay with you, we'll wait till after the OTA practice because I think we'll have plenty to talk about. See the whole team on the field. We haven't seen the veterans on the field since January, so that's it's kind of an off-season milestone.
Thanks for the week off last week, by the way.
You're welcome, buddy. Don't get used to it.
All right, we'll do it again next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chud. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I appreciate it, as always. This has been the latest edition of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks a lot.